Let's call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order. It is regular in the sense it is regular in the schedule. You guys hear me? But it is certainly a new mode for us within the public health measures we are trying to respect. Members are all joining us via satellite tonight, and we appreciate their efforts to do that. I will ask that we take a roll call for the record. Additionally, when you wish to speak, do your best if you can to motion and or at least say your name out loud so it helps both Deb and I recognize for the minutes who is speaking. We don't have reports this evening. I'll just say thank you, and we hope everyone who is joining us is well and safe and healthy this evening. So we will begin with a roll call. Mrs. Ritchie, would you like to call out your name? When Mrs. Ritchie calls out your name, please respond here.
Okay, yes. I'll start with Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, are you present?
Okay, I don't hear. Let's move forward.
Okay, Mr. Burke.
Present.
Mr. Deneen.
Here.
Ms. McCammon.
Here.
Mr. Maroney.
Here.
Ms. Hockman.
Here.
Mr. Sini.
Here.
And Ms. Stein.
Here.
So just confirming, is Dave Brown on the call?
Is Mike muted?
Okay. Okay, Dave, if you unmute your mic just to confirm you're on the call. Dave Brown.
Present.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so all members are in attendance. Thank you, and we will move right into discussion and possible action on April break and establishing a date for graduation. Dr. Adley.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you. If I may just take a wee moment just to thank those members of the community and the parents who are looking in tonight. Thank you for working with us in this forum, and also for your assistance over the past 2 weeks as we roll out the e-learning. It's much appreciated. So tonight we're looking at the April break and establishing a date for graduation. One action sort of depends on the other action. So it's a fast move. Since writing this memorandum on Friday, things have changed because we were looking at the end of March from the governor's closing of the schools, and now that has changed to at least the 20th of April. I'm not quite sure what today's comments imply for us, but we'll see as we sort of move forward. So some of the reasoning for changing the April break also would have positioned us in the best position possible if, and they're very unlikely that we had to come back to school, but that's clearly not happening at this particular point. So at this point, we had the April break, which was April 6th through the 10th, with one snow day that we had. It's important, I think, just to recognize we want to make this decision for our family planning. But with one snow day, we were scheduled for June 16th, would have been the graduation date. Given a couple of variables, one that clearly the public health emergency that we're dealing with, two, that the recent rollout of the e-learning, I think it's the consensus of staff, parents, that the best thing to do, we probably received just over a dozen communications from parents, and I think every single one of them are in favor of really not having a full April break at this particular point. I think there was one that suggested a 4-day weekend, but everybody else was feeling the momentum that we have gained. It would be a shame to lose that momentum. So I'm recommending in line with what I believe to be in line with the governor's executive order number 7 that removed the requirement, the 180-day requirement if we were out for so long because of school. The 180 days, you still have to try and meet it as best you can, and we are meeting the 180 days if we change the April break. So the April break I'm suggesting is that we remain in school for April 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, and take a long weekend on the holiday, which is the 10th and the 13th. I do think some sort of break would be helpful to our staff and even to our families. If you're like some families, when you're juggling an awful lot at this particular point, maybe going stir crazy, I think a little break. From the process would be healthy for everyone, and it would also allow us to continue the momentum that we are on in terms of bringing the e-learning platform to our kids. I don't think a full week break would be helpful to everybody. So that would be the recommendation. If that's the case, I would bring graduation to June 11th would be the last day for students. That would be graduation day. That's a Thursday. And the last day for teachers, they would have a work day on the 12th of June. I'm happy to
Board questions?
have questions.
Yep.
And if you have questions, please identify yourself.
Jill McCammon. Alan, can you talk about who you consulted in from the teacher population in making a 4-day decision? And what I'm getting to is where the teachers were coming from and what they're looking for gaining as far as the intense amount of work that they're doing.
As you might expect, I worked through the president to solicit their feedback. I also solicited feedback from leadership on CDSP. I think the teachers understand that there's no point sitting home right now doing nothing in April, but also they don't want to lose the momentum. But simultaneously, given the responsibilities that they're juggling at home, they're teaching and looking after their kids and trying to facilitate their children teaching. But I think that they concur that a little break, just would be mental break, physical break for everyone would actually be healthy. If you want to call it social emotional health, I think that's not an understatement. But I think taking the full April break is not necessary and wouldn't be as a healthy decision.
Any other board questions?
Excuse me, John Cini has one.
John?
Is there another weekend that we might need another 3-day break along the lines based on the school calendar, Bradley?
Not, as I say, not that I'm aware of, and given the governor's discussion today, I'm not quite sure what that means, but no, I'm not really. I don't see one in the calendar that would be, if something came about where there's circumstances that come to the table because of this is a fluid, changing situation, perhaps, but not at this point.
So, John, if I understand the question, I think what's nice about this is that May has a long weekend built in with Memorial Day. If I understand, might we need another kind of mental break at some point? May at least has one long weekend already planned. This would give April one, and then June we'd be out by the 11th. So I think we could maybe meet that mental, if there's need for a pause given all the work, we could at least meet that one long weekend a month. If I understood that might be of value.
That's where I was going. Thank you.
Tara, could I jump in? It's Deborah Ritchie.
Go ahead, Ms. Ritchie.
So I'm just curious, since we're on the calendar, if we could find out real quick how the administration is going to treat the PLC days. Are we going to try to incorporate them into the calendar?
Well, for now, I would say that we have PLC and meeting time built into the schedule that is already running under this. So I don't think that would be the case. I'd be happy to defer to Dr. De Silva if she would like to comment on that. But I think some of the planning time's already built in, and we'll probably navigate that as we go.
That is the case, actually, Dr. Adley. This is Dr. De Silva speaking. We already do have, while we made every effort to keep our schedules similar to what they were, they're not exactly the same, and we do have PLC time built in each day. Our departments have been meeting with their department chairs and/or principals.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that given the new environment for learning, that we're giving our teachers enough time to regroup and collaborate. So it sounds like you feel there is enough time.
There's never enough time.
I believe at this time we are okay with what's built in.
Thank you.
This is Jill McCammon. One of the questions we received from a constituent was about the concerns that an e-learning day is not the equivalent of a school day, and wondering why we were going to go ahead and end on June 11th and not go out even further. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, there's several issues with that. Two main issues. One, I would say it is a e-learning day, and by the commissioner's remarks and the executive order, the e-learning days do count as school days. So I think that's, I mean, out the door, that's one of the issues. The second issue is really a union issue. The teachers are meant to teach a total of 108, or work on 187 days, including the professional learning days. If we're doing e-learning days, we are going to be up a lot of money if we want to pay the teachers for extra days to work at the end of the year.
But the staff feels at this time that we are meeting the educational needs, and so this is based on the commissioner's ruling. These are school days, and that's the union's understanding as well.
Oh yes, that's definitely the union's understanding. So we're treating these as school days, Joe, definitely.
Thank you.
Any other questions, knowing that what we would do tonight is vote on a graduation date, and where in the past we have only been able to do that by April 1st, there was a change in the legislature even prior to all this that allowed us to set that date earlier. So I would say that the board would be well served to vote tonight, given that our meeting schedules could be irregular, and then people certainly would know what the graduation date is going forward. So are there any other questions surrounding setting this graduation date, knowing that in doing so we are also changing the calendar, and that would also require a vote? Okay.
Yes, this is Dennis. Sorry, I'm still a little confused on the graduation date of how we're going. We took away April break, which is 4 days, so we moved back to 4 days, but we lost days during the transition from when we first left school till now.
Yeah, so you are right, Dennis. That's probably the most. That's probably the issue that's most at play, if anywhere at play. You had 2 days. If you recall, it was a board meeting on a Wednesday evening, and then abruptly we left school. But according to Executive Order number 7, it was any school that closed because of the coronavirus was allowed to actually do what we're doing, and that's what the executive order allows us to do. Now, the worst, honestly, I don't know what the state's going to do tomorrow. Never mind down the line, and if anything comes down the line where that would change the calendar moving forward, that's fine. If there's anything that comes out that would require us to go after school for a day or two, then that's a different matter. But at the moment, that's not. Those aren't the rules of engagement necessarily.
So to be clear, what we vote on is a graduation date. We don't vote on the last day of school. So what we have before us tonight is to vote on changing the calendar for April break, and then we have to vote on setting a graduation date. Which basically what that does, what the subtlety there is, if we needed to have school in session post-graduation date, we legally can. If for some reason the state said we're counting differently, which currently they are not under the executive order, but if something was to change, what the board does have to vote and set is a graduation date. That makes sense, Dennis? Did I answer your concern?
Yes, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
So just so that this is Jill McCammon, just so that we're all on the same page in terms of which days were counted. The 3 days of last week were counted, plus the entirety of this week on forward. Is that correct?
Yeah. Just say it again.
So were the days that were counted as school, or the 3 days from last week, Wednesday through Friday, that were mandatory? And then,
Open.
sorry?
Thursday and Friday.
It's Thursday. It was the Thursday and the Friday.
Of last week
Yeah.
on forward.
Right, and then the full week.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Just so, thank you.
I'm sorry, it's Deb Ritchie. Can you just clarify that? Because I thought the days started counting when we closed school, which would have been, if I'm doing my calendar right, March 12th.
So Thursday and Friday of March 12th and 13th, those are the 2 days that Dennis is talking about, right? And then the days every day since. So those are the days that we're talking about, and I feel as if we are complying with the executive order doing that. If it changes, then I would bring that to your attention. But it was Wednesday night whenever we notified the parents that we would be transitioned to an e-learning plan.
So again, what I want to do is make the clarification is what we're doing tonight is setting a graduation date. Historically in this town, graduation has been the last day of school. It wouldn't have to be. That is our intent. If the state was to somehow come out and say we recalculated differently, we can both still set a graduation date and have to make up a day. But that would only be if the state required us to do so, and under the current executive order, they are not requiring us to do that.
Hey, Tara, it's Dave Brown. Quick question. From the comment Dr. Adley made, the snippet that came out from the governor today about possibly closing, any decision we make on graduation tonight is subject to any further orders from the state, correct?
Correct. We can vote and set it, but the state has ultimately something to change. Or some people can graduate our seniors.
Somehow, some way, yes.
Yes. Any other questions? Okay, so with that, first, what I'd like to do is amend the calendar for April.
Tara, I'm sorry, you kind of broke up for me.
First, we need to amend the calendar, and that is, the motion would be to have school in session 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. That's the first motion, and then we take the 10th and the 13th off.
Tara, it's a little choppy. If anyone has their mic open who's not speaking, could I ask them to close, please?
Okay, so I'll say that again. We will amend the calendar. School will be the motion is that school will be in session the 6th, 7th, the 8th, and the 9th of April, 2020. And there will be vacation days taken the 10th of April and the 13th of April. So can someone move that for me?
This is Dennis. Second.
Dennis?
Dennis?
Second, Ms. Stein.
Mrs. Stein, seconds. Any other discussion before we vote? Dr. Abbott?
Just for technicality.
Yeah.
Just
Oh, okay, so the 10th is already a holiday. So what you're really doing is you're amending school to the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and then you're taking off the 13th. Okay, so all in favor, I'm gonna go down the line, and I'm gonna go. Are opposed, in favor, opposed, or abstaining? Dave?
Can I do it? Are you going to do the roll call, Tara?
You want to do it, Deb? You can go ahead. You have it in front of you.
Okay, that's fine. So, Mr. Brown?
Mr. Brown votes in favor.
Mr. Burke?
Mr. Burke votes in favor.
Mr. Deneen?
In favor.
Ms. McCammon?
Yes.
Mr. Maroney?
Yes.
Ms. Ockman?
Yes.
Ms. Ritchie, yes. Mr. Sini?
Aye.
Ms. Stein?
Yep.
Thank you.
And that is unanimous, and that motion passes. Second, can we, may I have a motion to set the graduation date as Thursday, June 11th, 2020?
Mike Burke
So
move.
Mr.
Second.
Burke moves, and Mr. Deneen seconds. Give Deb a second, and she'll do the roll call again.
Okay, so Mr. Brown?
Mr. Brown votes in favor.
Mr. Burke?
In favor.
Mr. Deneen,
In favor.
Ms. McCammon,
Yes.
Mr. Maroney,
Aye.
Ms. Ackman,
Yes, in favor.
Ms. Ritchie in favor, Mr. Sini,
Yes.
Ms. Stein.
Yes.
Thank you.
That motion carries unanimously as well. Thank you, everyone. With that, we'll move on to our second agenda item, which is a discussion and possible approval of temporary powers granted to the superintendent of schools. This really came up both through communications from board chairs through the states and in my conversation with Dr. Adley. As you saw, I sent you all a template policy that CABE had put out for districts that needed it. As I went through our current policies and in conversations with Dr. Adley, we already have stipulations to waive policy. And so rather than instituting a whole new policy and then having to repeal it, I think we should consider the suggestion as put forward by Dr. Adley to waive certain policies under as memos dated March 23rd to 20 from Dr. Adley, both with his needs and with how that would work. So I hope you all had a chance to read that memo. I would assume that there's some questions here. So let me open it up to the board first. Is there any questions on Dr. Adley? And we are talking about a limited suspension of policy 3050 and a policy of 3125. The first being the procedures around transfers and line item transfers, and the suspension of 3125, which is purchasing. Let me open that up to questions.
Could I just ask, are people seeing the memorandum on the screen?
No, we're not.
Okay. Board questions. Mr. Burke, you're muted. Board
Alan,
questions?
this is Jill McCammon. There's some important information, I think, in the memo that you outline about what specific aspects of the policy that we are waiving. Do you want to speak to that before we move forward? That this is specific to, for example, transfers that would have to do with anything related to certain types of purchases that you do outline, just for the benefit of the public.
Yeah, so we have obviously a limited staff, little to no staff actually, who are working in the building at this particular point, understandably and appropriately so. So in order for some processes to actually take place, we have clearly things we still need to do and move forward, and it's just we want to make sure that we can do those. So items that are under line item transfers and purchasing, those processes are just going to change a little bit based on, sometimes we have to centralize those, and that just changes the timing process, and any of the transfers, if we're not going to meet only for other essential things, then we don't want to hold up some processes that actually have to take place. Richard is on the phone, I think, or is on the line. If Richard wants to talk specifically about the purchasing specifics to that, are you on the line?
I'm here. Yep, I'm here. So it'd primarily be if we would need resources for custodial supplies, for example, maybe technology resources, technology repairs. We would delay those purchases by not being able to have a board meeting or a finance committee meeting to have a transfer approved.
So in terms of a broad sense, really what we're talking about is any sort of transfer and or purchasing that is related to the environment we're in due to the public health emergency. So, but as Mr. Rudel just said, technological purposes, if kids have a problem and we need to make some sort of shift and yet the board can't meet to approve, I believe, and I think you outlined quite nicely, that these are specifically related to the situation that we are in due to the public health emergency.
Yes, they're only attributable to that.
Okay. Board questions?
It's Deb Ritchie. So my question is regarding the monthly financial reporting. And I'm assuming we're going to continue having some form of a board meeting going forward. So I'm wondering why we have to suspend completely financial reporting. I would like to see that continued and it said in your memo periodically, but you will be reporting or creating financials. So obviously we wouldn't expect the same level of detail that we normally get for our monthly finance meetings and our monthly transfer requests, but the financials should still be in existence. So I'm wondering if it's possible for the board to still receive that information on a monthly basis.
Oh, it would absolutely be appropriate to receive that on a monthly basis, and you would receive it on a monthly basis. It certainly doesn't preclude that. Going forward, we're just not quite sure what the board meetings will look like, but there's no intent in this. Actually, there'll be more communication, but the regular process of informing the board of what the monthly statement of accounts is can still take place through the communication, and that would be minimally on a monthly basis. We can still do that, but it's the adoption of it and any transfers for voting and that type of stuff that if it ends up where we can meet for some reason and things change, then we do that. But this just gives us, it just doesn't hold things up just now as we move forward during this particular period of time. But the answer is yes, Deb, yes.
So to Mrs. Ritchie's point, I would be in favor then, under the suspension of policy 3050, that last line, it says the superintendent will keep the board apprised of information with informational emails about any transfers and adjustments. I would be in favor, and Deb, would it meet your needs and or any other board members after the word informational to make sure we put in the word monthly? And then we're just sure financial, even if it is, just to keep us up to date on what's going on, and so that we are fully abreast of the situation. We're not playing catch up when school opens. Is everyone comfortable with that addition?
I'm sorry, Tara, where are you adding that to?
Under suspension of policy 3050, in the last line, the superintendent will keep the board apprised of informational email. If we were to put an informational monthly email.
Okay, so you would like the motion to read that we're going to change that wording.
Yeah.
So sorry, I probably should have given you a better. So the way this is organized is we give you a couple of examples of the types of policies that might need to be amended, whether they are related or other related. For examples, we broke down under the business office. Operations. Then we would I took the cage template, which was well done, and based on what we have, based on what we said about the policies and the business office operations and processes, we tailored this and sort of like just tailored it to the Darien situation. So basically, you'd be what we're suggesting on policy 350 is kind of, you can certainly put monthly in there and we would do that. But under the authority that's granted, you might want to put it under somewhere under here.
So why don't we do this? I think what we're looking for is reporting out on a regular basis that the board can expect. And given that we get monthly financial reports, I would suggest that we continue to receive a monthly update even under these authorities as suggested. Does that meet your concern to get a monthly report?
Tara, quick question.
Dave?
On page 4, item number 8, which says modify business office operations and processes, such modification may include monthly financial reporting. Could we just strike that sentence, such modification may include monthly, and then we won't be removing it?
That's fine.
Where is that, sir?
So you want this, I'm wondering if, Dave, what you mean is in that such modification may include, do you want to change that may to shall? Yep.
Were you talking to me?
No, I was asking Dave or Deb.
Oh.
Actually, the opposite, Tara. We would strike it because this says it would modify procedures, and then it gives an example. So we don't want that to be a procedure that would be modified. We would like it to stay current with monthly reporting.
Okay.
Okay. So I think that meets both Deb and Dave's concern that we will just continue to receive monthly financials even under these new authorities. Is everyone else comfortable with that? Any objection to that?
May I just ask the business manager? I just want to check in.
Sure.
I don't think there's any reason we couldn't do that, Richard. I just want to make sure that I'm not overlooking something.
Nope, that was fine. We had talked about just emailing out the monthly packet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mike Burke, I have one question. With regard to the procedure, when conditions change and we can revert to our prior policies, do we have to meet, or can the superintendent sign off to go back to the former policies? We may not need to know that information tonight, but we want to know how to put the policies back.
So I think it's probably wise if we put some language in this, should we grant these authorities to have some language to say it's concurrent with the reopening of school. Like by the time school reopens, the board should be able to revert back to normal business practices, or if we want to put a date at which these need to be re-looked at. I think either of those options is fine. I would just need some direction from the board. And I think that's what you're looking at, Mr. Burke, like how do we revert back to business as usual and make sure that these provisions don't continue, correct?
Correct. This is Mike again. I would think that a date would give us the opportunity to deal with the circumstance where if the schools do not open within the academic year, and the schools technically would not be open, but we would want the policies back in place because the financial transactions go on throughout the entirety of the calendar.
Okay, so I'm open to suggestions.
So it's Deb Ritchie. And I think picking a date is a good idea because at some point we will be able to start reconvening our regular meetings in person. So I think my thought would be at this point, the governor has indicated April 20th. So I would suggest putting April 20th as the date. And then we do have a meeting scheduled for the 14th. If we need to extend that, we can do that at that meeting.
Any other thoughts?
Hi, it's Dave. I would be okay with putting April 20th, but I would just add after that or until such time as the board deems to recall such granted authority.
Dr. Adler.
If we're going to be out for a longer period of time, which it obviously looks like, I'm thinking honestly the requirement is perhaps going to bog us down a bit. I would motion to extend that period of time because that's to all intents and purposes that's literally a month and it's around the corner.
So is there a way to hybrid it, taking Dave's suggestion? And because I agree, I'm a little concerned with a date certain. We end up with a hard stop to say April 20th or as guided by the governor's orders. Because if the governor next week pushes this out to May 10th, then we would know that these would extend to May 10th.
And I would just, instead of a date thing, we just put these powers are granted until such time as the board votes to revoke said powers.
Yeah,
I'm
I think
comfortable with that. I think that's a good suggestion. Ms. Maroney.
I agree with Mr. Brown. That's where I was going.
Okay.
I agree too. It's Mrs. Stein.
I agree. This is Mike Burke.
So these powers granted until the board
Until such time as the board votes to revoke such powers.
all right.
It's Deb Ritchie. Do we want that to apply to each of the authorities granted?
So this is what I would suggest. I would suggest we take each one of these 8 we vote on them because different ones may come at different times and there may be different needs, and all of them will be subject to that language that Dave just gave us, that they are granted until such time as the board votes to revoke such powers. Is everyone comfortable with that? Which means it's a little laborious. We would take 8 and we'll go off the memo just noted, but we'll have to vote 8 times.
I think yes, but before we jump in, I'd love to understand the first suspension of powers is based in specific policy, but then there's the subsequent line items, I believe 2 through 8. Are those just specific powers that you pulled out? I understand you were looking at some information from CABE. Do any of those refer back to our board policies, or are these just what CABE believed superintendents would need to operate under the current conditions?
Some of them are, the majority of them probably in some shape or fashion are CAPE oriented, but they cover the circumstances that we are looking at right now. Our current policy allows us to do some emergency work, but some of the things we might be needing to do just go beyond that. So these are more specific. I tried to drop some out that perhaps that didn't apply to us. Given the impact on our business office and some of the policies we know we need to change, I tried to tailor them for our unique sort of situation that we've got going. We've got we've got food services going. We've got the libraries reimagined. We got different sort of, there's things there that some of these things can deal with. Now, for instance, the first one is talks about 2 board policies, but it also talks about another board policy. I don't know what they are, but I'll give you an example. One of them might be the hiring of an administrator, because according to our policy, every administrator at our level, at the school level, comes to the board through that decision-making process. Well, I'm going to have an assistant principal at the high school. I can't stop that process, so I would need that to continue. There's an example, right? So it does give us some specific things that we're doing, and also some broader policies we may or may not know about that we're going to have to change.
Okay, so then I'd like to just make sure the board is reassured and is certainly not a comment on this administration, more that for the public watching in, that the board will be kept abreast. This is only if such action needs to take place, and the board will be kept abreast, but you need to keep the ship moving forward. Because we may not all be able to meet as regularly as we would like.
Yes, and look, listen, I'm not going to get too far out ahead, right? I think I know what the board would like. Certainly there'll be a process of calibration that reminded me along the way if that was the case. So clearly there has to be excellent communication regarding these things, but you'll get that. There's no sense in this by, I mean, I don't think anybody's saying to circumvent the process, but we're in exceptionally unusual times. We can't grind out over every single decision. So anyway, we've tried to answer your question, Jill, we've really sort of tried to tailor some of these to our specific set of circumstances. We may have left something out, I don't know, but I thought the case gave us a nice overview to start with that was helpful to work from, and we tailored it from there.
Questions?
I'd just like to comment, I'm in total support of the administration's proposal. This is John Cini.
Thank you.
Agree, Mrs. Stein.
I agree, Duke.
Okay, so let's take these one by one since it's going to be 8 of them, and I'm going to take them as dated in the memo so that we can just waive the reading of each of these. I'll make the motion, and then I'll need a first and a second as usual, and then Mrs. Ritchie, get used to taking a lot of roll calls.
Can I make a suggestion? Sorry. Can we just for expedite speed, can we go to, and maybe for Deb's sanity, go alphabetical order to second?
Oh, sure. Although I have to get my alphabet right now. So may I have a motion to approve? Sorry, I want to make sure I have Dave's language in here. So How about this? The following move, I think we have a way we can maybe do it in one, Deb, and you and I can work out some of the mechanics of it after. But may I have a motion to approve the suspensions of policies and authorities granted to the superintendent in the memo dated March 23rd, 2020, to be granted until such time as the board votes to revoke them. Items 1 through 8, they will be individually entered into the record. May I have a motion to do so?
So moved. Dennis.
And the second?
Second,
Me? Okay, and with that, I believe we can actually do one vote. So Deb, if you'll call roll call on those one vote, we will then enter them.
I'm sorry, so we're doing one vote, but we're gonna enter them in as separate motions so that in case we wanna revoke one, we can revoke one individually.
As long as it passes unanimously, yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Brown?
Votes yes for all 8.
Mr. Burke?
Burke votes aye for all 8.
Mr. Deneen?
Duke votes aye for all 8.
Ms. McCammon? Ms. McCammon?
Yes to all 8.
Mr. Maroney?
Yes to all 8.
Ms. Hockman?
Aye to all 8.
Richie, aye to all 8. Mr. Sini? Mr. Sini?
Sorry, couldn't get the mic off. Yes to all 8.
And Ms. Stein?
Yes to all 8.
So all of those pass unanimously. Thank you, everyone. That would be a huge help. With that, I'd just like to take a moment. This is actually our last meeting with Dr. De Silva, and I feel like we've said this lots of times, but certainly don't want it to be missed. But Dr. De Silva, wherever you are in computer land, I see Mrs. McCammon right now, but
I'm here. I think if I speak, you'll hear me.
we wish you well. Ridgefield is lucky to have you. Thank you for seeing us through as far as you have. And I know you have a few more days here, and we will all reach out to say our thank yous and our goodbyes, but I just want to do it publicly and with heartfelt enthusiasm for your next steps.
Well, thank you, Tara. Thank you, Dr. Adley. I realize that these are difficult times for everyone. And regardless of who you are or where you live, all of our attention needs to be focused on the challenges of today. And most certainly, I think the months ahead. Having said that, as I transition to face similar challenges, I would really be remiss in not taking a moment to thank the Darien community, the PTOs, the Board of Education for always supporting the curriculum department, and certainly by extension, me. Over the past 5 years, the board has asked very difficult questions, engaged in very challenging conversations, and this board has always made courageous decisions in the best interests of the children of Darien. I think as a result, those decisions alongside a committed group of teachers, administrators, and parents have allowed us to plan, prepare, and now implement, I'm hopeful, of a meaningful learning experience for students in a time of crisis. I'd like to thank this board, our school-based principals, curriculum leaders, the superintendent, cabinet, and of course, most specifically, Marge and Shirley, for partnering me with on this journey for the past 5 years. Darien should be proud. I'm proud. I wish the students, teachers, and families of Darien the very, very best.
Thanks, Dr. De Silva. Wish you the best too. Stay safe and well.
Unfortunately, I'm going to be able to keep us a close colleague, Susie. Susie, I'd also like to thank you for staying around as long as you did and transition yet another superintendent. I got here, so thank you very much. And You leave the place and hand the place off in great shape. I've always said that, honestly, between our staff and the curriculum here, they are the solid foundation of the school system in many ways, and that's directly attributable to Susie, because things are in place here because of her good work and the good work of the team. So thank you, Dr. Silva. I'm not a couple of days with you, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck.
You're very welcome. Good luck, everybody.
I would just take a minute to please say thank you to all of our staff who are working in this new environment, and all the reviews I've gotten have been great. I think it's a credit to our staff, what a great job they're doing. And it will take a moment, since the public is viewing every day. People send me pictures of kids on fields. I ask the public please to help support us that fields are closed. Recognize we're an educational system. We are not a security force. We do our best to keep our fields closed, but the public's cooperation in that would be much appreciated. And we are closed for a public health crisis, and we ask for everyone's support during this hard time, and we understand everyone's frustration. So again, I keep saying we get through this when we get through it together, and we get through it together when we have great staff like Dr. De Silva, Dr. Adley, and all our teachers doing amazing things. So thank you, work with us. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Johnson, motions to adjourn.
Johnson, you so moves. May I have a second?
Dave Brown,
Katie
second.
Stein.
Ms. Stein seconds. All in favor? Deputy Roll.
Okay, Mr. Brown,
Mr. Brown votes yes.
Mr. Burke,
Burke votes aye.
Deneen,
Aye.
McCammon,
McCammon votes aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Achman,
Aye.
Ritchie, aye, Sini,
Good night.
Stein.
Yes.
All right. It is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you to those parents who tuned in, and have a good night.
You're off.